This has been a lot of fun to prepare. We both immersed ourselves in poetry for days, just reading and reading and choosing and picking. And it's not just our own poetry. There's also poetry from other people, poems we love. So we'll be sharing both the reading so Emmanuel first with Pied Beauty and Daffodils.
As we all know, and as we all live with this knowledge, which is not easy, we are we are in a somewhat destructive relationship with our natural environment, which is, of course, bad for the natural environment and, of course, bad for us. It's one of those paradoxes that has been emerging lately. And I have been, as I read these poems, as Daphne said, as I did part of the research, I felt my love for the natural world, which is always powerful anyway, and has been since I was a kid growing up in England, in the English countryside. I could feel this nature love growing. And it wasn't just a kind of a remote, abstract, metaphysical, literary thing. It actually affected the way that I watched the woodpeckers out there and the blue jays and our cats sipping at our water fountain and the oak trees swaying back and forth. I think nature poetry can reignite, re-enliven our feeling for the natural world, and therefore it can be part of healing this destructive relationship that we have with it. I think it's harder to cut something down or destroy something when you love it. And I think nature poems can help us to love the world around us, the nature around us. So here's our first poem, and this is by a great poet, Gerard Manley Hopkins, part of the English tradition, and it's called Pied Beauty. And this is one that I love. Pied Beauty. Glory be to God for dappled things, for skies of couple colour as a brinded cow, for rose moles all in stipple upon trouts that swim, fresh fire coal chestnut falls, finches' wings, landscapes plotted and pieced, fold, fallow and plough, and all trades their gear and tackle and trim. All things counter, original, spare, strange, whatever is fickle, freckled, who knows how, with swift, slow, sweet, sour, a dazzle dim, he fathers forth whose beauty is past change. Praise him. And here's another one from England, from another great English poet, William Wordsworth. I wandered lonely as a cloud. I wandered lonely as a cloud that floats on high over vales and hills, when all at once I saw a crowd, a host of golden daffodils, beside the lake, beneath the trees, fluttering and dancing in the breeze. Continuous as the stars that shine and twinkle on the Milky Way, they stretched in never-ending line along the margin of a bay. 10,000 saw I at a glance, tossing their heads in sprightly dance. The waves beside them danced, but they outdid the sparkling waves in glee. A poet could not but be gay in such a jocund company. I gazed and gazed, but little thought what wealth the show to me had brought. For oft when on my couch I lie, in vacant or in pensive mood, they flash upon that inward eye, which is the bliss of solitude. And then my heart with pleasure fills and dances with the daffodils. There we are. Thank you, William. Thank you, Gerard. And now it's up to Daphne.
Yep. So, first one, Blackberrying by Sylvia Plath. Nobody in the lane and nothing but blackberries. Blackberries on either side, though on the right mainly. A blackberry alley going down in hooks, and the sea, somewhere at the end of it, heaving. Blackberries big as the ball of my thumb and dumb as eyes, ebon in the hedges, fat with blue-red juices. These they squander on my fingers. I had not asked for such a blood sisterhood. They must love me. They accommodate themselves to my milk bottle, flattening their sides. Overhead go the choughs in black cacophonous flocks, bits of burnt paper wheeling in a brown sky. Theirs is the only voice protesting. I do not think the sea will appear at all. The high green meadows are glowing as if lit from within. I come to one bush of berries so ripe it is a bush of flies, hanging their blue-green bellies and their wings panes in a Chinese screen. The honey feast of the berries has stunned them. They believe in heaven. One more hook and the berries and bushes end. The only thing to come now is the sea. From between two hills, a sudden wind funnels at me, slapping its phantom laundry in my face. These hills are too green and sweet to have tasted salt. I follow the sheep path between them. A last hook brings me to the hill's northern face, and the face is orange rock that looks out on nothing but a great space of white and pewter lights and a din like silversmiths beating and beating at an intractable metal. And this one is one of mine called Tumbleweed. I noticed that with a lot of women, when we write poetry, it's more an inner landscape as well as the outer. So we just go in and out. Everything about describing nature doesn't happen as much. So, Tumbleweed. Patience, my beautiful. There are forms of oblivion that are not worth the cost. We do get into such bad habits. We leave the wrong door open, we put garbage on windowsills instead of flowers, and we stuff our cupboards back to front with stale smells, moth-bitten hats, torn silk, scrunched up paper, rubber bands, and tumbleweed. When stuff falls out, it kicks up the dust of procrastination. It blurs the image of roads not taken. I catch a glimpse of a tail as the snake slithers off. I like a bright sunny kitchen to help me forget. It makes no difference at the moment. Right now, it is sunny outside. I like to stroke the basil in the pot as I pass by. I wriggle my nose to the smell of jasmine and honeysuckle, and I most certainly break for magnolias in bloom. There was this field on the way to Lewis that was so pretty in spring, it caused accidents. The farmer was ordered to shave it bald. When crop circles turned up down the road by that motorway, hardly anyone went to look up close. Whatever they are, they're perfectly beautiful, all the more so for being either a joke or terribly meaningful. Once, when I was counting my blessings and finding them lacking, I planted a magnolia called Amazing Grace for good luck. I was hoping for a blessing for my life and my garden. Forest fires swept Canberra after we left. Is my tree still standing? My hopes are still standing, whether I find out or not. Things have a way of sorting themselves out. Even tumbleweed must find a home. So,
Great.
so over here to you.
So I've been doing a series of short YouTube posts about the natural world, and I had a crab poem, which is one of my fave nature poems, and I just got a whole bunch of crab pictures free online and put them together, and here is the video or the YouTube post, Crab. Go for it, Andrew.
Crab. I said, hey, yo sloucher, old lurcher, old bully boy, carapacious lout, you with your periscope eyeballs, your sidewalk shuffle, you in your camo haunch like a tank with your claws and your jaws and your waterproof, slaughterproof, laughterproof armor. Hey, yo, croucher, you with your back to the wall, crusty old hoodlum brooding in cracks, crustaceous thug, gripping and ripping at kelp, clenched on yourself like a fist, surly old, burly old, gnarly old, what? Someone should tell you, you're beautiful.
Thank you, Andrew. And the next poem is also a poem about sea creatures. I was living way up in the north of California in a county called Humboldt County, and I was standing on a rock over in the tidal area, and a whole host, beautiful shoal of tiny little fish were all swimming together in a tide. And I asked myself the question, what's it like to be a tiny little fish in a shoal of fish, which was a challenge. And this poem, Shoal, is the answer. This is, if you like, you've all seen fish, tiny fish swimming around in shoals. You can, if you wish, just kind of close your eyes and see them as I read this poem. Shoal. I move, you move, it moves around us, and we move through it, and it moves us. You and I are one, and you and you and you and you, and all of you and I are one. We are one. We move as one, and it moves all of us as one. And all the smells and sounds and tastes, dips and liftings of it, on the long, strong flowings from before, behind, all this we move through. And the silverings of water light, the quick sucked breaths, and the shockwave jolt of fear we move through, scream the single scream through each gaped mouth, the sudden horror hole that sucks us down. Haze of whisperings, the crisscross trails rippling before, behind, among us, hoverings, the sudden dartings through the sparkle and the dark of it, and all the smells of it, and sounds and dips and liftings of it, and the long, strong flowing from behind, before. All this we move and move through. All of us are moved by what we move through. There you go. Back to Daphne.
Oh, that makes much better sense when you close your eyes and know what you're doing with the fishes. So next poem is one of mine, and this one is more Greek. The previous one, it was about living in England, but this is more about Greece and Australia. And it's called White Hot, and it's one of mine. White hot, the heat inside your bones tells you you're home. Just like in your dreams of home soon, home to rest your head. The rest you crave, away from dust and constant movement, away from wind, sand, thorns, rust. Now you can rest your soul. The thirsty vista sweeps away and out, further and further. It's miles from the closest spring. You were there in another dream, in a place where thirst becomes unbearable, and the rustle of angel wings is a hiss so faint you have to stop breathing to hear it. Home is where the bitter spring gurgles its song inside your veins, where the wind is you, where sunshine clings to your skin after the sunset is long gone, and the stars have ancient names you understand. Salt scratches the window panes, its swirly song eclipses the night crickets, and all you have to do is sit there, watching the sea of fireflies pop and bob among the olive trees. And the swoosh of galaxies kissing may have happened in your dream, but I don't think so. And this is a new poem to me, In the Clearing, by Patricia Hooper, it's an American poet. In the Clearing. After last night's rain, the woods smell sensual, a mixture of leaves and musk. The morels have disappeared, and soon I'll come across those yellow chanterelles, the kind they sell in town at the farmer's market. Once I saw the Swedish woman who raises her own food foraging for them, two blonde boys quarreling near the pickup. And the next morning, they were selling them from their stand beside the road. Out here, among last year's dead leaves, with the new shoots of spruces poking through them, I've come to the place where light brightens a glade of ferns, and the log someone else placed here, carved BW, where I sometimes sit to listen to the birds. Today, the sun is breaking through the wet branches, revealing a clean sky, brilliant, cerulean. Then, suddenly, a raft of scudding clouds promises more rain. If it comes, I'll read all afternoon. Henry James, or maybe Eudora Welty's Delta Wedding, where so many characters vie for attention, I can never keep them straight. Here, there's no one else, no one to worry over or argue with or love. Maybe the earth was meant only for this, small comings and goings on the forest floor, the understory astir with its own secret life. If I sit still enough among the damp trees, sometimes I see the world without myself in it. And it always surprises me. Nothing at all is lost.
I love that ending.
Yeah, it's good.
Great. Okay.
So you're next.
I think we're on now for a bid, another bid. Is that right?
That's right. Here we go.
Forever and forever, the quiet waters slip away beneath you. Always you are retrieving where you are, kicking thin splayed legs in endless readjustment, stitching patterns on an endless spool of rippled silk. You skim the sheen of foliage and sky, doppelganger dragonflies, while sunlight stencils you on underwater gold, dark companion miming every dart and glide. This is the image you will follow when the stream at last outruns you and your shadow drifts away and disappears.
Okay, and the next item is a poem by, maybe in my opinion anyway, one of the best living American poets, W.S.Merwin. Mostly, I mean, what is going on in our relationship, as I was saying earlier on, as we all know anyway, with the natural world is somewhat destructive. And in this poem, rather unusually, W.S.Merwin finds a way for the natural world to kind of fight back rather than just, you know, everything happening to it. So this is called The Last One by W.S.Merwin. Well, they made up their minds to be everywhere because why not? Everywhere was theirs because they thought so. They with 2 leaves, they whom the birds despise. In the middle of stones, they made up their minds. They started to cut. Well, they cut everything because why not? Everything was theirs because they thought so. It fell into its shadows and they took both away, some to have for burning. Well, cutting everything, they came to water. They came to the end of the day. There was one left standing. They would cut it tomorrow. They went away. The night gathered in the last branches. The shadow of the night gathered in the shadow on the water. The night and the shadow put on the same head, and it said, now. Well, in the morning, they cut the last one. Like the others, the last one fell into its own shadow. It fell into its shadow on the water. They took it away. Its shadow stayed on the water. Well, they shrugged. They started trying to get the shadow away. They cut right to the ground. The shadow stayed whole. They laid boards on it. The shadow came out on top. They shone lights on it. The shadow got blacker and clearer. They exploded the water. The shadow rocked. They built a huge fire on the roots. They sent up black smoke between the shadow and the sun. The new shadow flowed without changing the old one. They shrugged. They went away to get stones. They came back. The shadow was growing. They started setting up stones. It was growing. They looked the other way. It went on growing. They decided to make a stone of it. They took stones to the water. They poured them into the shadow. They poured them in. They poured them in. The stones vanished. The shadow was not filled. It went on growing. That was one day. The next day was just the same. It went on growing. They did all the same things. It was just the same. They decided to take its water from under it. They took away water. They took it away. The water went down. And the shadow stayed where it was before. It went on growing. It grew onto the land. They started to scrape the shadow with machines. When it touched the machines, it stayed on them. That was another day. Well, the next day started about the same. It went on growing. They pushed lights into the shadow. Where the shadow got onto them, they went out. They began to stamp on the edge. It got their feet. When it got to their feet, they fell down. It got into the eyes, and the eyes went blind. The ones that fell down, it grew over, and they vanished. The ones that went blind and walked into it, they vanished. The ones that could see and stood still, it swallowed their shadows. Then it swallowed them too, and they vanished. Well, the others ran. The ones that were left went away to live if it would let them. They went as far as they could. The lucky ones with their shadows. Whew. Next, please, quickly.
The next one is Daphne. It's a newer poem. It's called Patricia. After the mad dash to shut the windows, we don't go back to doing stuff. We just sit on the balcony, paying obeisance to the storm. Rain, thunder, lightning. We sit on our balcony just being, watching. Not doing or achieving, we're stretching the limits of our being so we can be filled with more emptiness. We sit and watch the storm. Ambulances start within minutes. I have never checked to see if there's a correlation, though when I hear the sirens, flood is always what flashes in my mind. The smell rising to greet us has a word all its own, petrichor. The smell parched earth gives up like a prayer, a word I have to look up every time, a treasure hunt brought about by my aging memory. Two ancient words put together. It means stone releasing the fluid that runs in the veins of the gods in place of blood. A good thing, as you can't get blood from a stone. The thunder is very far away or spent, who knows. Safe in my house, I thank the rain and the thunder. A kookaburra laughs in the distance, but we all know it's not really laughing. We all know we need this rain right now, and we know the trees are happy. And this is Clouds by Denise Levertov, again, inner outer landscape. The clouds, as I see them, rising urgently, roseate in the mounting of somber power, surging in evening haste over roofs and hermetic, grim walls. Last night, as if death had lit a pale light in your flesh was cold to my touch, or not cold, but cooling, as if the last traces of warmth were still fading in you. My thigh burned in cold fear where yours touched it. But I forced to mind my vision of a sky close and enclosed, and like the space in which these clouds move, a sky of grey mist, it appeared. And how, looking intently at it, we saw its grey was not grey, but a milky white, in which radiant traces of opal greens, fiery blues gleamed, faded, gleamed again, and how only then, seeing the color in the grey, a field sprang into sight, extending between where we stood and the horizon. A field of freshest, deep, spiring grass, starred with dandelions, green and gold, gold and green, alternating in close-woven chords. Madrigal field. Is death's chill that visited our bed other than what it seemed? Is it a grey to be watched keenly? wiping my glasses and leaning westward, clearing my mind of the day's mist, and leaning into myself to see the colors of truth. I watch the clouds as I see them in pomp advancing, pursuing the fallen sun. Nice.
And here's a poem by another American poet whose work I admire greatly, Robert Frost. This is probably one of his most best-known poems. And I have a strange relationship with this poem because about 4 or 5 years ago, I was living in Pacifica, little town on the Californian coast, and I was in a choir called the Seaside Singers, and I set this poem to music. And somebody else in the choir orchestrated it for all 4 parts, soprano, alto, tenor, and bass. And I can kind of hear us singing this poem as I read it. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening. Whose woods are these? I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. My little horse must think it queer to stop without a farmhouse near, between the woods and frozen lake, the darkest evening of the year. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. The woods are lovely, dark and deep, but I have promises to keep and miles to go before I sleep. Miles to go before I sleep. Oh, love that one. And now I think this is the last poem in our reading, and this is called Creation, and it's by a lady I knew years ago in Los Angeles, and some of you may have known her, Denise Arquette. And this is her poem called Creation. And Mardi, if you're listening, God bless you. This is just wonderful, this poem. Creation. Before light breaking into galaxies, before the sound of the seas crashing, moon, craters, ice, masses, before amoebas and chromosomes, the melting of 1,000 suns, before angels, moss, forests, spines, fins and wingspans, before reptile teeth petrified in mud, fossils and waterfalls, before drums and branches, stones crumbling, crosses falling, trumpets, before reindeer thundering across the tundra, clay towers and mist swarms of flies, before desert and horses, leaves and roots and stems, before buzzards sweeping over empty chasms, the vast echoing sky, before heaven, night had no calling, before sex and weather, the starting and stopping, calendars, colors, before men picked up sticks, touched women, made fire, before planets and earthquakes, centuries past, flags, the hair of children, pails gathering rain, before troops shouted, a quiet singing, white seashells, before grief, a silver ring, remember, beloved, when lava rivers did not babble and the wind was silent deep beyond the earth, before time and stars, blossoms and nectar, before sensing and reason and sleep, when all that all eyes can conceive and all our minds can reach fade like nations and paintings, a pantheon of people buried under pyramids, between galaxies, shapes and colors, gold rocks floating on a stream. Before ghosts, civilizations, space shuttles, machinery, before the idea of being, the beating of the heart, before the first word ever spoken, breath taken, a primeval grunt, before a whisper of life, there was Allah.
Thank you very much. And
The
then-
end.
Thank you, Daphne.
That was fun.
Yeah. Brilliant.
There you go. Yep. So I suppose, you know, we could do more about, you know, love and puppies and, you know, themed ones. I mean, trees would be a lovely one. Just all about trees. What do you think? Harris, you have to mute yourself.
No, that's better. Yeah, I think a series about love would be really good.
Yeah.
Love?
Yeah, a series about love.
You mean a themed Zoom about love?
Yeah, absolutely. Love poems. Yeah, that would be really good.
Okay. Yes, that's a good idea. Do you have any idea who might organize it?
Well, I'm happy to participate if someone else would like to do it with me.
That was a neat dodging of the question. I should go to, there's couple of things I wanted to say. One is that I would like to recommend this book, Forgotten Language, which is Contemporary Poets and Nature, edited by Christopher Merrill. And I don't know if I've done a list of good classical music inspired by nature, which will be accompanying the YouTube version of this. Is that right, Andrew?
Yeah, we can add quite a few resources, both in the description and in the video, Emmanuel.
And the other thing I wanted to mention is if you want to write about nature, one neat idea is asking yourself, what can various, parts of the natural world teach me? We tend to think of ourselves in terms of the great hierarchy of human, animal, vegetable, mineral, and we're kind of on the top, but there are a lot of Aboriginal cultures that see us on the same level as the rest of nature. So you can ask yourself, what could clouds teach me? What could a mountain teach me? What could grass teach me? It's a really neat way of writing a nature poem once you get going on it. And I have done that with kids, and this is a book called Teach Me How to Swim with the Wind. This is a book of teach me poems about the natural world by third graders, and they're lovely. So that's one way of getting into writing a poem about nature. That's all I want to say for right now. Thank you very much.
Let's continue with the feedback right now. I see that Theo, you've put your hand up. Thank you for doing that. So go ahead.
Yeah, well, I thought this was splendid, and I wouldn't mind seeing another one like this about nature. I love all these poems, and a couple of poets occurred to me that you guys didn't use, but could, I guess. Emily Dickinson and Antonio Machado. I have a book of his poems translated by Robert Bly. Some of them are wonderful and short. And then I want to mention also that I liked your first choice, Emmanuel, because many years ago, I started to set that poem to music, to make a piano accompaniment and a vocal line. And I got as far as the melody for the whole thing, but I never could come up with a good piano accompaniment. But lately it's come to my mind to try again, because I really love that poem.
Yes.
I guess that's about all I have to say, but I'm sure glad to have heard you guys with your own poems and those of some other people too. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Theo. I see somebody who's identified as iPad. Do you want to go?
It's Elia. Elia.
Hi. Oh, hi, Elia.
Hi.
I didn't recognize.
I'm in my kitchen. I loved it. I loved the combination. It felt like a bouquet from nature. Everybody put their own flower in, or their weeds, or whatever it was that they put together, and it made a beautiful bouquet. And I liked its intercontinental feeling. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. And who else would like to respond or say something? Daphne, go ahead.
Me. I don't know if people are aware of this wonderful series that Samuel West has been doing with poetry. And in his case, he was only doing requests. And then he talks a little bit. I'll send you the link. It's just absolutely wonderful. And he started it because of the pandemic, because time is so hard there. But people were requesting poems. So he wasn't picking the poems. He would just do what was requesting. So we could put something out there, Andrew, and say, you know, this theme, and request your favorite poems. And then perhaps, but that, I think for something like that, it would take at least a month, if not more, to do it, because, you know, waiting for people to answer, catching people awake when I'm awake, you know, and all that sort of thing. People don't answer their emails. Yeah, and poets and actors are, you know, poets and actors. So anyway, but it had some, and he would talk quite a bit before the poems and put them in context. And I really loved it. He was saying a story recently because his mom is Prunella Scales, who's was doing The Wife and Fawlty Towers and many other things. And she's got Alzheimer's. And at one point he said they were sitting in the kitchen and he had just received a request for a poem by James Elroy Flecker, you know, and he was really glad because the previous request, he forgot that that was his mom's favorite poet, you know. And he just said to her, do you want to read this? And Alzheimer's or not, she was able to remember the poetry and then discuss it. And she did it with the first reading, you know. And so there's all sorts of lovely stories like that. And it's very, I like the way he reads. He doesn't put much of himself in it. It's just the poem speaks. So seems like a nice guy. So
we've certainly had a lot of ideas on how we could have another theme use and how we could invite people to participate by suggesting poems. And I think that's wonderful. Bye, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Alan.